And my earliest books, all three of them were really historically based. And so they took up as their subject the Armenian genocide and its aftermath. And then the third book, it was a trilogy of books, was about the genocide in Guatemala in the 1980s as part of the Scorched Earth campaign. So especially the early books, have always involved huge amounts of research. And so I spend a lot of time, especially in that first decade of writing books, in the library. I feel like librarians are a writer's best friend. For a novelist also involves you're trying to understand something well, and you don't have the experience, so you do everything you can to try to get close to that experience. Which in my case did not mean I went to Mexico and rode on the top of cargo trains like my character, but I do try to do everything I can. Research involves travel often, and talking to a lot of people, interviewing people, yeah.
But most recently I've been looking at the nature of narrative itself, and in particular the way that we structure our narratives. The tradition has been, and in fact writers are often taught to structure their stories along what we call the dramatic arc, or the narrative arc. This is basically a wave-shaped thing in which there's a situation, it gets more tense, there's more conflict, it reaches a climax, and then it collapses. We get this from Aristotle originally, we get it then from tragedy and from drama. And what's odd is that fiction is not tragedy and it's not drama, it's its own thing, and so I've always been curious about this sort of imposition. It can be a beautiful, elegant form and create wonderful stories, but I've been really interested in stories that do something else, that seem to have at their core different shapes, that can be just as organic as a wave, but aren't that particular shape, which, in addition to being prescriptive, has a troubling, I think, masculine sexual element to it, when you think of something becoming more and more taut, and then climax, and then end. So I've been exploring narratives that are innovative, that are experimental, that seem nevertheless really organic and true, that have, it seems to me, other natural patterns at their core, like meanders, like spirals, like explosions, like networks or cellular systems. And so I've just finished a book in which I'm making the case that those exist, and that we can, in fact, seek them, find them in our own stories. There may be something natural to those shapes and our current stories. Thanks.
For me as a writer, the creative process is one that never ends, which is to say that as a writer, I'm always thinking about stories, and specifically when I'm working on a particular project, a story or narrative or a poem, that project is always foremost in my mind. So the thing I've learned is that as a writer you have to do the kind of research you need to support your project and to give you knowledge about it. But also as a writer you have to be open to serendipity. A large part of the creative process is just a kind of stumbling into things that turn out to be very fortunate for the work. But again, these are things that you stumble into and that you can't access by research or planning from the start.